Welcome to Haunted Hospitality, Southern Stories Told by Spooky Gingers. I'm Robin.
And I'm Zoe, and I have a story for you guys today. But first, Robin, how's life?
It's good. I have started journaling.
Ooh.
Yeah, I started journaling, and it's just nice. I started journaling because, and I think I told you this earlier, I am tired of not remembering things that have happened to me. And so, because I just thought, like, okay, I was a lover of American Diary or Dear America books.
Okay.
And then the royal equivalent where it was like Royal Girls of History.
Okay.
And so I loved those, and I was like, why don't I journal? I just feel like it would suit my personality so well to journal. But then I'd be like, Dear Diary, today I went to the store. And so I was like, I don't know, I just can't log my day. And then I realized you don't have to just talk about what happened that day. You can talk about anything. You can talk about things in your past that you want to remember. You can talk about things you're musing on. You can say, my cat was really cute today. And so
that would be my journal entry every day.
I was just thinking, this is for me, and then this is also for future me when I want to look back. And so I've started journaling, and it's very nice.
Okay.
10 out of 10. Snaps.
Yep.
How are you, Zoe?
Well, I'm good. I already failed NaNoWriMo like 2 days into it, so that was great.
I completely forgot about NaNoWriMo until like yesterday.
Yeah, no. I even had a baby goal of like, I'm just going to write every day. And then, no, that didn't happen. But yesterday I spent so much money on running shoes.
Oh.
So that was not fun, but it was necessary.
Have I seen your shoes?
They're over there. They're the teal ones, if you can see them from there.
They're cute. They look very nice.
So
they look expensive.
So I went to this store. It's called Fleet Feet, and they like have you stand on this machine, and it scans your feet, and then you walk across this machine, and it scans like how you walk, and so it diagnoses the way you walk, and it prescribes you a shoe essentially.
That is so cool.
And the reason I went is because I was having issues where at the end of my run, by the end of my run, my feet were numb. Like, I was getting the radio signal, like the pins and needles.
Mm.
And that's not really good because I'm not going to be able to keep running like that, I'm never going to be able to do a full 5K if my feet are numb a mile in,
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the place, and they discovered that I walk on the inside of my foot. So they showed me this 3D model of my feet, and you can see a clear arch where I'm walking on the inside. Like the outside of my feet are almost not even touching the ground.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, that explains why my ankles hurt all the time. And also, so I didn't know if you knew this. I didn't know this, but shoes aren't sized like pants, they're sized like bras. So I've always known I've been between a 9 and a 10, but apparently I am a 9.5C.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so there's a width measurement on your foot.
Okay.
And it's A, B, C, D, just like bras. And the shoes that I was wearing were a 9.5B, and the shoes that I just bought were a 9.5D. So that means the B's were way too narrow on my foot, and it was cutting off circulation, and that's why my feet were going numb.
So now you got a shoe that's too big for your foot?
No, now I was a C+, so
okay.
Yeah. And then he also put an insole that will help me start walking more on the center of my foot than on the inside, and so he had to go a little bit up, that way he could fit the insole in. So yeah, hopefully my ankle and shin and foot pains will be going away.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Can I tell you my something spooky? Something
yes.
southern?
It's
both.
Give me your something something.
My something, it is both something spooky and something southern. It is something that we could also possibly do an episode on later. Mm-hmm. So consider this a possible preview.
Okay.
You know Annabelle the doll?
I do know Annabelle the doll.
The South has one too.
Yes.
It's called Robert the doll.
I've heard of Robert the doll.
All right, for all you listeners out there who haven't, Robert the doll is currently in Key West, Florida, in the East Martello Museum.
Mm-hmm.
So, Robert Eugene Otto went by Gene, and his grandfather gave him a doll that's dressed as, like, in a sailor suit, and the grandfather brought it from Germany. And Gene had it, and he started, like, talking to it a lot. And one night, his mother heard huge crashes of furniture from Gene's room and went to check on him. And at first she couldn't get in. Finally she got in, and Gene was terrified. The furniture was in disarray, and he said, Robert did this. And the parents heard Gene talking to the doll after this, like I said, but the doll would respond. And so, like, they wouldn't be in the same room. They would hear their son talking to the doll, and then they heard the responding voice, and they were like, that's not our son's voice.
Yeah.
People would see Robert the doll running around.
They would see him running around?
I saw on the sources I looked at that they saw him running around. And then, you know, Gene grows up, he gets married. He lives with his wife. He takes Robert with him. His wife is like, this doll is creepy as, oh, get out. Can we put him in the attic? And so Gene's like, regretfully, okay, we'll put him in the attic. And people who visited heard Robert walking around upstairs. And people who passed the house would tell them that they saw Robert the doll looking out of the upstairs window. The only thing is, there was no window in the attic.
What?
Robert was getting out of the attic. Supposedly, reportedly. He was getting out of the attic, and he would go and sit in front of the window in the upstairs bedroom, which is where he was put before he was put in the attic.
Oh.
Yes. When they left and new people moved in, Robert was still in the attic. So they didn't take Robert, apparently. Which meant that this kind of cycle happened again with another kid. But now, Robert is in the East Martello Museum. There's, I'm guessing, a lot more to this story, but this is a something. And by nature, the segment is shorter than an episode. Funny how that happens. But, you know, we might do this again later. If you do want us to go into it, let us know. We might do it anyway.
So there is one thing about Robert the doll that I do want to bring up real quick that you kind of, like, brushed upon. But so Robert the doll was given to Robert Eugene, right? Before Robert the doll was given to the child went by Robert.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when the child got Robert the doll, he's like, no, the doll is Robert. I'm going to go by Gene now. And so the child decided he was going to start going by Gene.
In which case, like, the doll was almost the dominant personality.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. That's, like, the one fact that just stuck out of my head every single, from the first time I heard it.
Oh, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Well, I hijacked your something. Sorry. No, I didn't.
Now I'm just going to hijack something. So if you ever, like, tell me, because, like, I always have a story and you're like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Next time you come in with a full-length episode, I'll be like, oh, yeah, this. And then I'm going to, like, just go into it, Zoe.
And I will allow you.
So, Zoe, do you have a story for us today?
I do. Now, this story takes place in Florida. And when I was originally doing the research of this story, I was thinking maybe this isn't going to be long enough for an episode.
Okay.
However, this might still end up being short, but there's just so much that this one person does that I'm just like, excuse me, what?
Okay.
That I had to share it, even if it's going to be a shorter story. This is not one I've ever heard before. And it's just like, excuse me, what is just the summation of the story.
Okay, lay it on me.
So I'm going to tell you the story of Abraham Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah. Earlier, guys, she said, I did a story about Shakespeare. And then she swiveled her nose at me. Abraham Shakespeare.
Yes. So, Abraham Shakespeare was born in 1966 in Lakeland, Florida. Ooh, sorry. Before I go super into it, I do want to say I debated with the way I was going to tell this story. I reorganized my notes about 2 or 3 times because it's going to be one of those things where it's like pretty obvious who done it, But, like...
Was it Abraham Shakespeare?
No.
Okay.
Abraham Shakespeare is the person who dies.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he definitely didn't do it.
Okay.
But this is a case where there's so many details, but there's not a lot of details. I'll get into it.
Okay.
But so I apologize if the notes seem a little bit out of order, just because I debated heavily on how I was going to tell the story.
All right.
So on November 15th, 2006, he was on his way to Miami with a coworker named Michael Ford. There seemed to be a lot of misinformation in this case when it was becoming known, because it did span a long period of time that people were reporting on this, because people were reporting on it before his body was found.
Okay.
So some people say he was a pool employee, not in the way that he worked on a pool, but like he would show up to, like, every morning he didn't have a steady job. Every morning he would show up to this place and they'd say, we need 4 people working on this event, and they would pick 4 people and send them on this job. And so he was a laborer. Mm-hmm. But other articles say that he was also a trucker. So I didn't know exactly what he did, and maybe he went back and forth between jobs.
I can see that.
Yeah. And his coworker, Michael Ford, was a trucker. So they stopped at a corner store in Frostproof, Florida, to buy a couple sodas and some cigarettes on their way to Miami. And Michael offered to buy Abraham a soda, but instead Abraham gave him $2 and said, buy me a lottery ticket instead.
Okay.
And he told him the numbers to put on the lottery ticket. And one of the lottery tickets won the $30 million jackpot.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, just fun fact, the numbers were 6, 12, 13, 34, 42, 52.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, just to sum this up again, Abraham told the numbers to Michael, said, buy me these. Michael came back, gave him the tickets, and later they found out that one of the lottery tickets won the $30 million jackpot.
And they both found this out.
And they found it out together.
Okay.
So Michael then demanded that, since he was the one who actually purchased the tickets, that Abraham gave him a share of at least $1 million. Mm-hmm. And Abraham refused.
So Abraham gave him the money to do it, and they didn't.
It was Abraham's tickets, Abraham's money, Abraham's numbers.
It was just, okay, Michael, you're going to the store. Can you do this for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Michael then sued Abraham and alleged that Abraham stole the lottery tickets out of his wallet, that it was actually Michael who picked the numbers and all of that. But luckily, the court system agreed with Abraham, not Michael, and so he was found not guilty. I don't know if you can be found not guilty in civil court cases, but...
I don't think that's how it works.
But
along those lines, yeah.
Yeah. So he wasn't able to collect the funds until after that court case was settled.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So he ended up... when you purchase or you win a lottery, not that you or I have personal experience.
Oh, yeah, that one time I won the lottery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can choose between getting monthly payments or getting a one-time lump sum.
Yeah.
And if you do the monthly payments, you get more in the long run. But everybody advises that you do the lump sum. That way you can start investing it and you can kind of get the hell out of Dodge and hide yourself, essentially.
So interesting. You get all this money and then your life can completely change.
Yeah. So Abraham chose to do the one-time lump sum. And so his award was only $17 million. Only. Still nothing to sneeze at. So pretty much soon, I think he won in November. Yeah, he won in November, and by January, he had moved into a $1 million house within a gated community. And he actually got a mortgage out on it. He didn't just pay the lump sum. He just got a mortgage out on it. And I mean, he had a pretty large down payment, but
yeah,
which is the quote unquote smart way to do it.
Okay. We don't have to go into the financial legalese. I will take your word for that.
Okay. He also purchased a Nissan Altima. Some people say he purchased a BMW, but it seemed like he only purchased one car. And
I'm sorry, he got $17 million and he only purchased a Nissan Altima?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't a real big spender on things.
That makes sense. You know what? I respect that. I respect that a lot.
He was quoted saying he's not materialistic. However, he had a girlfriend at the time, and they got on an airplane to New York, spent 3 days there, flew back, and then a week later they flew back to New York. You know,
you can afford to do that. Have fun, bud.
So he put his money more into the experiences rather than the materials.
Yeah.
He also purchased a Rolex from a pawn shop. So it's like he didn't even go out to Rolex and buy a brand new one. He bought it from a pawn shop. Like, he was still pretty frugal with his money. Mm-hmm. So the car, the house, and the Rolex were the only like big purchases he made. The rest of it seems like he was being pretty smart with his money. Mm-hmm. However, initially when family and friends were reaching out to him for financial help, he was helping them. Mm-hmm. But it got to the point where, like, people he didn't even know or people he had seen once before in his life were coming up to him and being like, I'm about to get evicted. My kids can't afford to eat. Can you help me out? And, like, this one person didn't even know Abraham at all. He was an inmate, so he's in prison. And he wrote a letter to Abraham saying, hey, can you give me $1,000? And Abraham's like, I don't even know you. And he said, what are you going to do with $1,000 in a prison anyway? Mm-hmm. And so he sent him $50.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I know in South Carolina that if you win a lottery, you have the option to stay anonymous.
Yes.
I'm assuming that he wasn't anonymous.
He was not anonymous.
Do they have that option in Florida, or do we know?
I don't know if it's an option. Mm-hmm. However, I don't think he was thinking he would have to be anonymous.
That makes sense, yeah.
I know there's a lot of articles and things like that today where pretty much everybody knows if you win the lottery, you get the one lump sum, you hire an attorney, and you
I love that we all have a plan.
Yeah,
just in case.
But I don't really think that was people's thinking, at least not back then.
Okay.
I mean, it was only 2006, so it's not like it was the 1800s, but yeah.
Back in the ye olden days, we didn't know what to do. We won the lottery.
Exactly. So he was very kind-hearted, and he wanted to give money to people.
Yeah.
And he also would hang out around the same areas that he would always hang out. Like, there was this one local mart that he would hang out in before he won the lottery, and he still went out there to, quote, look at the woman, end quote. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was also not exactly the most unnoticeable person. I think they said he was like 6'5" and only 150 pounds. So he's like this really tall, gangly guy.
He's a beanstalk.
He's a beanstalk. And I would probably say like 25 of those pounds were his dreads. Like,
he had dreads?
Yes, he had dreads. He had really long dreads.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's just like, he isn't somebody that you wouldn't see walking down the street if he walked past you, you know?
I get that.
Yeah. But yeah, so he started becoming like really angry and he started feeling alienated. Like, people were only reaching out to him for his money.
Yeah.
And he did end up having a relationship with that woman I mentioned that he flew to New York, but then she got pregnant and he left her.
Oh, okay.
And he already had a 10-year-old son from a previous relationship as well. And I didn't see anything saying this, but I do know it's like a common thing, like assumption that if you got pregnant by the rich man so that he's tied to you, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know if that was the situation, but he may have at least felt like that was the situation.
Okay.
So the longer it went on, the more irritated and angry and alienated he felt. And he thought that they would only accept him if he was giving them money, and that they stopped caring about him. They just cared about his money. He told his brother at one point, I'd have been better off broke. And he told a childhood friend, I thought all these people were my friends, but then I realized all they want is just my money.
Mm-hmm.
So he withdrew more and more from everybody, and he cut off a lot of people he used to be pretty close with. And in 2008, he met this woman named Doris Moore. She went by Dee Dee, and she sought him out to write a book about him. Because he kind of started becoming one of those people that it's like there were articles written about him because he was kind of public about how people were constantly asking him for money, you know? So she reached out to him to write a book about him, and apparently they got along pretty well. They weren't dating or anything, but they started a company together called Abraham Shakespeare LLC. I don't know what the company did, but it seems like Dee Dee was she had her own company called American Health People or something like that. I'll get to it. But she seemed to be interested in helping him manage his money, and he was A-okay with that. And so, yeah. On January 2009, Abraham actually sold his house and several other properties he has to Dee Dee's company called American Medical Professionals. That's what it's called. But he sold...
Why would American Medical Professionals need his house?
So, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
But, so he sold his house and other things to her company. She also took control of all the funds for Abraham's company, Abraham Shakespeare LLC. And the idea was everything is going to be in Dee Dee's name, so he didn't have to pay taxes, and he didn't have to report any earnings, and he didn't have to pay child support.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, child support is a percentage thing based off of your income.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's based off of your income, and so the idea was that he wouldn't have to pay taxes, he wouldn't have to report anything, she would just kind of handle everything for him.
But, okay.
And
does she kind of own everything by that point?
Her company did, yes. However, what they would do is she would just give him cash.
That's a lot of trust you're placing in a person.
That you literally just met October 28, 2008, and you sold the house to her January 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dee Dee seemed to abuse her power.
Didn't see that one coming.
Pretty shortly after she took over all the books for Abraham's company, she used over $1 million to buy herself a Hummer, her boyfriend a Chevrolet Corvette. She also bought a truck and a vacation.
She bought a vacation?
Yeah, well, she spent the money on a vacation.
Okay.
She claimed that it was a gift from Abraham, however.
I mean, when you are in control of his finances, that gets awful hairy with gifts.
Mm-hmm. So, on November 9th, 2009, the same year that Dee Dee took over everything.
So, but like a full year after they met, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Abraham's family reported Abraham missing. They were worried about him because they had not seen him in person since April 2009.
What?
Yes.
So that would 7 months.
Yes. Between April and November, they had not seen him in person once.
Why did they wait so long to...
I'll get to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So they knew he had been feeling angry and alienated, and he had often talked about just cutting everybody off and just leaving. Mm-hmm. And so... But they didn't believe that he would go that long without anybody seeing him. It was because of the holidays were approaching.
Yeah.
And they hadn't heard anything from him about coming back for Thanksgiving, coming back for Christmas. He has 2 kids, you know.
When you say seeing in person, did anybody hear from him, like, over the phone?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm like...
You're fine. You're fine. So they had hoped that he would take his money, and he had taken his money and was living in the Caribbean Sea, as he mentioned. Sorry, Caribbean. That's one of the ones where it's debated, right?
I've heard both. I say Caribbean.
Okay. Pirates of the Caribbean Sea.
Yeah, I do that. I do believe that's the official title.
But the investigation actually soon proved something a little bit more sinister. So Dee Dee was the first person that they interviewed because she was the only person that had any direct contact with him after April.
Okay.
So Dee Dee said that he had decided to leave town because he was sick of people asking for him for money, so she had helped him leave town. She had been funding him, and he would left, but then they asked her where he went, and she said Texas, and then they asked her where he went, and she said Jamaica, and then they asked her where he went, and she said Puerto Rico, and then they asked her where he went, and she said Orlando, Florida, and then they asked her where he went, and she said he was sick in a hospital.
That sounds all above board to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was definitely keeping her story straight.
Yep. Yeah.
And this is where I kind of debated on putting the order in, because Dee Dee is very obviously suspicious.
Yep.
Very suspicious. And I didn't know if I should just, like, how I should order it, you know?
Do you let me know that it was her, or what do you do?
I do let you know the full story eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. So the police found out that, so they did some investigation to Dee Dee because they're like, can't keep your story straight.
And by this point, do they know that she has all his money? Did the family know that she had all his money?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the police found out that when Dee Dee's company purchased Abraham's house, there was no actual record of her paying Abraham the $655,000 that they had agreed on, or paying off the $185,000 in outstanding loans she said were owed.
Okay.
So the loans actually were supposed to be a lot more. So she didn't even know how much the loans were supposed to be. Never mind, she had no record of paying them off. And she said that, and they showed that she had no record of paying Abraham. However, a lot of her payment to him were cash under the table payments. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of really hard to, but at the same time, $655,000 has to come from somewhere. So Dee Dee claimed she didn't pay him for the house because he was a drug addict and that he would simply use the money to buy drugs. So she was really just looking out for him.
But wasn't she supposed to be giving him money all along because it's his money?
Yes. So Dee Dee was seen going in and out of Abraham's house, but he was never seen and no one was allowed entry except for Dee Dee. Some family members received texts from Abraham's phone. Mm-hmm.
During the April to November period?
During the April to November period and a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
However, they said those texts didn't seem like they came from Abraham because he was illiterate. He had dropped out of school in 7th grade, and even up till then, he wasn't doing well. So he didn't know how to read or write.
So he wouldn't have sent them texts.
And some of them texted him back with questions that only Abraham would be able to answer.
Smart.
And they just didn't get a reply. Yeah. In August 2009, Abraham's mother had received a card from his cousin that had Abraham's signature on it. But the cousin didn't tell her who had given him the card.
Wait, I'm sorry. Somebody gave the cousin a card that had Abraham's signature on it.
To give to his mother.
Like a birthday card or something.
Yes, a birthday card.
Okay.
Yes. So theoretically, Abraham signed this card, sent it to the cousin, and the cousin gave it to the mom.
Just as like one extra level of I'm staying away from you guys, theoretically.
Yeah. Also, Dee Dee at one point went to dinner. I think this was in December. She went to dinner with Abraham's mother to be like, no, he's okay. You can call off the investigation. Here, I'm gonna call him. So she called Abraham. He picked up the phone, and they were able to speak very briefly, but Dee Dee cut the conversation.
What did he say?
It just, hey mom, I'm alive, love ya, bye, essentially. Like, I mean, I didn't see a recording or anything, but
that's so, if I were the mom, I'd be like, I'm sorry, Dee Dee, who are you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so awful.
So, while investigating Dee Dee, the police also learned that in 2001 she had been convicted of insurance fraud and falsely reporting a crime. And she had served a year in probation. And she also had filed for bankruptcy in 2002. So really somebody that you want handling your finances.
100%.
Oh, it gets worse. You want to know what crime she falsely reported?
What did she falsely report?
So, her car was in danger of being repossessed. And again, this is back in 2001. So she paid somebody to hide her car in their garage. And she was in the back of their car. She taped her own wrists and jumped out of their car. And when passerbys were like, oh my God, what happened? She was like, I was kidnapped or carjacked, kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and they put me in the back of their car and I escaped to freedom.
Oh my God.
So she went to the hospital and she had a rape kit done and she was battered and bruised. Also, she could say, my car was stolen.
Wait, so she was she battered and bruised? Did they...
It was a completely false story. She had
Okay.
taped her own wrists. She threw herself out of the car randomly. She had not been sexually assaulted. Basically, what she was trying to do is pretend like she had been carjacked. And that way she would get the insurance money, but she would be able to keep the car.
It's a very elaborate way to solve that issue.
Yeah, and she
Okay.
pleaded no contest. I don't know. That's not pleading not guilty or guilty. It's pleading no contest. But so she basically admitted, like, that was a lie.
My guess is you could do no contest in civil court, not
Yeah.
criminal.
Yeah. So that really made police be like, we need to look into this woman more.
Absolutely.
So, but there wasn't any proof that she had done anything. Most people online actually seem to think that he took his money and hightailed it out of there.
But he didn't have his money.
But he didn't have his money. But, well, okay. By the time that the police started investigating in December, the money was all gone. They didn't say where it went, but they did say the money was gone.
I can see that. I mean, it's been years, and it was $17 million to begin with, and then you have a lot of people asking for money, and then...
It was only 3 years.
Okay.
In November 2006 is when he won the ticket.
I've heard that a lot of people who win the lottery can get their money done with pretty quickly.
Yeah, because they go too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody handed me $17 million, I don't even know how to comprehend $17 million in my hand. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. So some people thought he hightailed his money, or took his money and hightailed it out of there. Some people think that Michael, the friend that sued him earlier, killed him and took the money. A lot of people were thinking Dee Dee killed him and took the money. Some people think that he just died. Just died.
Like, died and nobody knew? Or...
Yeah. He went somewhere and died.
Okay.
So, Officer Mike Smith went undercover, and he approached Dee Dee as one of Abraham's friends. Dee Dee offered...
Oh, he was pretending to be one of Abraham's friends.
Yes.
Okay.
Dee Dee offered him $50,000 to claim responsibility for Abraham's death.
I'm sorry, that is not a worthwhile transaction.
And he agrees, because he's an undercover cop.
That is a dream situation if you're an undercover cop.
He agrees, but he tells her that he needs to know more about what happened to make it convincing.
Mm.
So Dee Dee brings him to a concrete slab in the backyard of her boyfriend's house, which she purchased and put under his name.
The concrete slab or the house?
The house.
Okay.
Yeah. So she brings him to a concrete slab. Though I did see one source say that it was not in her backyard, but it was in some law office backyard. But I was like, that's the only source I saw that said that. But anyway.
Okay.
But everybody else said it's in her backyard. And she said he's buried under there and gave him a .38 revolver and said this is the gun that killed him. She doesn't say who killed him. She doesn't say what happened. She just said, this is the gun that killed him. Here you go, Mr. Undercover Police Officer. And his body is buried under there.
Wow.
And so he's like, cool. Thanks for letting me know. I'll take responsibility. And so, of course, he immediately goes back to the precinct and was like, guys, undercover work is awesome. So
wait, okay, I'm still so, like, her reasoning is insane to me. So, like, okay, this guy's friend comes forward to you, and you see his friend, and you're like, hey, friend of this guy, here's incriminating evidence. Because, I mean, even if you told a friend that, like, okay, if something awful happened to you, and somebody was like, hey, can you, like, pretend that you killed her and I'll give you $50,000, I'll be like, yeah, you got to give me more details. You know, like, it's the same thing. It's like, my motivations in this situation are, like, loyalty, not... that's just nuts to me.
However, leading up to his death, it was, like, one of those situations where everybody only wanted him for his money.
So she was
thinking money talks. And I'll get into it in a little bit of all the things that she did.
Okay.
But, so, the police come out, and they find Abraham's body exactly where Dee Dee showed Mike Smith. Mm-hmm. The coroner said that he had died April 6, 2009.
So the whole time?
The whole time he was dead.
Okay.
Even over that phone call and the letter.
So did they just have somebody who sounded a lot like him?
So.
I feel like mothers would be able to tell, this is not my son's voice.
So I wasn't able to figure out how he died, because Dee Dee never admitted to it. She said she was innocent the whole time. However, he died in Dee Dee's house with the revolver that Dee Dee handed Mike Smith, and he was shot with it. She said first that it was drug dealers. He had invited drug dealers over, and she wanted them out, and they ended up killing him.
She was really into blaming drug habits, wasn't she?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think he did do some drugs, but like...
But she used it.
Yeah. And then she said it was a lawyer. Just a lawyer that killed him.
Okay.
Yeah. And then she blamed her own 14-year-old son.
Oh, my God.
And then she said it was self-defense.
Okay, one story is stronger than 4 stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was one of those things where it's like, she would tell the story, and then they'd be like, here's some facts that prove that's wrong. Oh, okay, I'll tell you the real story. Here's some facts that prove that's wrong. You know?
It kind of makes sense. Okay, none of this makes sense. What I mean to say is, like, the fact that 2 of them didn't work out, and then she says, okay, it was my son. It makes sense you would hide the fact that it was your son. And then if it was her, well, you would have to kind of be in a different way for them to believe it, like you put your son on the line rather than say it was self-defense, but conceivably you could be the person to do that.
Yeah.
And so it gets more and more personal until it's finally herself, but under a different veneer, because...
Yeah. I mean, she claimed to the day to the end of the story that she was not guilty, it was self-defense.
Okay.
So, So, let me kind of retell you the series of events, but from Dee Dee's point of view. Mm-hmm. So, she shot him, killed him, however she did that, I don't know. But he was dead. So, in April, Dee Dee had called her ex-husband, James, and asked him to dig a hole in her yard. This was not abnormal because...
I'm sorry.
Because she hired him for yard work several times.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how many holes in her yard did she need? I'm sorry.
I think he worked in, like, he had a backhoe. Like, he worked in landscaping. And so, yeah. So she's like, hey, can you dig this hole in my yard? I need to bury some concrete and trash.
That's not how you dispose of trash, but okay.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, cool, and digs the hole. And then he leaves. And 2 hours later, she calls him back and is like, hey, I buried the trash. Can you come in and fill the hole and put a concrete slab over it?
Okay, at this point, I would fill the hole myself, guys. Not because of, like, I can do it, but, like, because you don't want people to see in the hole.
Well, by the time he comes back, it's dark. So he can't see in the hole.
I feel like I'd be able to just, like, peer. Flashlights are a thing. You would need a flashlight. Where's the hole I'm hanging at? Oh, there.
I don't know.
Sorry, there are holes in the logic here.
So
What was that?
holes in the logic.
Oh, okay.
You didn't even do that on
I didn't
purpose?
do it on purpose, no.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, well, so yeah, he came back 2 hours later. It was dark, and he filled in the hole and put the concrete slab on top. So, yeah. Yes, okay. So she had even thought to bury lime in his grave to dehydrate his body. So apparently, like dogs and stuff can sniff out dead bodies,
Mm-hmm.
So I think her thought process was that the lime would mummify the body, and certain vegetation that grows over dead bodies wouldn't grow, and it would just be harder to track.
Okay.
So she buried lime with him. They also discovered that a week after she buried the body, she had tried to convince an acquaintance to come in and move Abraham's body to a different location. I think she was realizing, hey, it's really stupid to bury a body in your own backyard.
Yeah.
And
then put a concrete slab over it?
Yeah.
It's a grave marker.
Yeah. And I think the acquaintance, she straight up said, I need you to move a body.
To an acquaintance.
To an acquaintance.
And that acquaintance was like, all
No.
right. Oh, they said no? Okay.
No. Yeah, they said no. And she just didn't try again.
And the acquaintance didn't call the cops, or
no?
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Mm-mm. Okay, so she had lived in Abraham's house to make it look lived in, and she had used his cell phone to send the non-convincing texts to family members, and she just wouldn't respond if it wasn't a question that she knew how to answer. She had offered the mother of one of Abraham's sons a $200,000 house if she would lie to detectives and tell them that she had seen him recently. The mother of his son turned her down, but did not go to police with this information. She also paid Abraham's cousin $5,000 to give Abraham's mother the birthday card, and it was that same cousin that she had pretend to be Abraham on the phone, and she paid him for that too. Suddenly, the offering a friend $50,000 to pretend to be Abraham is making a lot more sense in her mind.
Because pretend to have killed Abraham.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah.
Yeah. So Dee Dee was taken into custody on February 2nd, 2010, in connection with Abraham's murder, and her bail bond was set at $1 million. After the investigation, Dee Dee was charged with first-degree murder. Prior to being arrested, Dee Dee said in a press conference in front of Abraham's house, "I'm not scared of going to jail for murder because there's no jury that's going to convict me. They're saying that I took a gun, put it up, and killed another human being. I would never, ever, ever do that."
Okay.
On December 10th, 2012, after pleading non-guilty, she was convicted and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She was also found guilty for possessing a gun in course of a violent felony, and she was given a minimum sentence of 25 years for that.
So it's life plus 25.
Yes. And one last little thing, her ex-husband James, who buried Abraham's body, was charged with accessory after the fact, and he was found guilty for that.
When you said buried the body, do you...
but dug the hole and then buried the hole.
Because,
Yeah, they found him guilty of accessory after the fact. They were like, you probably should have had some red flags, and I don't think the jury believed him when he said he couldn't see inside the hole.
Yeah, I kind of find that suspicious.
Yep.
Okay.
But yes, that was a pretty short episode, but of batshit crazy...
Yeah. I don't think I saw much of that coming.
She, offered family members money to do things that was, clearly saying, hey, I killed Abraham. Can you pretend like he's not dead? And they were like, okay. Or they turned it down. But either way, they didn't go to the police. Mm-hmm. Granted, there's a lot of social issues related to this, and... it's not a clear case.
But there was definitely some shady things that were being done by members of his family 100%, no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah. And so there was one thing that Dee Dee said she said, I think it was in the court trial, but she said that money is a curse. It was a curse to Abraham, and it is a curse to me.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
It was that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, that was a very short episode, but...
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, guys, if you liked today's episode, please like, subscribe, review, tell a friendo. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/hauntedhospitality.
Yes. And if you want to see my notes, or not my notes, but my sources and my blog about this episode, you can go to hauntedhospitality.wordpress.com. Also, if you have your own spooky story or any feedback you'd like to share with us, you can email us at hauntedhospitalitypodcast@gmail.com.
We are on the interwebs. You can find us on Twitter at Haunted Host. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Haunted Hospitality. We hope to see you there.
Stay spooky.